What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe show. Like I do all the time, I say you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. Know that I'm a certified empowerment coach, president and CEO of Express Your Vibe Coaching Communications, and have not been live YouTube-wise for a while. Believe it or not, everybody, I actually took a vacation. Yes, I know. Dr. Vibe does take vacations, and maybe I'll do this in another stream because these conversations aren't about me unless I'm by myself, which I'm not, as you can see. I was down in Jamaica for a week, and it was outstanding. We'll leave it at that. Let's get back to work. Well, not work. Let's back to having epic conversations because I'm the host of Epic Conversations, and the Dr. Vibe show is a place for epic conversations. Do note, certified empowerment coach, president and CEO of Express Your Vibe Coaching and Communications. Check this out, folks. We have someone brand new, a newbie that's on the Dr. Vibe show. And she reached out to me. So I don't even remember how this happened. It just it happened. But we are very blessed and highly favored to have Pamela Price, who is, okay, get ready for a few moments, bio time. She's a woman, she's a lady. I don't like saying you, she's a lady on a mission. As a young girl growing up in Texas, she saw firsthand the impact of social determinants of health and was determined to not only do better for herself, but to help others along the way. In 2012, she started Priceless Vessels of Promise, a nonprofit organization aimed at developing and sustaining programs that educate, empower, and support young girls and women. As executive director, Ms. Price provides comprehensive community-based programs to local areas in the Richmond, Virginia Metro area. She has worked in the public health profession for nearly 20 years. Man, you look great for 20 years in the health profession, having gained vast experiences in public health, healthcare, and community health. She served as a member of the U.S. Army Nurse Corp. What? And man, I know someone who can protect me. And has excelled in government and non-governmental agencies, providing leadership and guidance on program management, quality improvement, and project development. She has conducted workshops and presented at national conferences to include the United States Conference, including the United States Conference on AIDS and the American Public Health Association annual meeting. You see, we don't lowbrow on the Dr. Vibe conversations here. She also serves as a consultant to community-based organizations, providing project development, management, and evaluation services. So welcome for the first time, and hopefully not the last time, Miss Pamela Price. How you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. After that reading of the bio, you can't help but kind of like, wow, I'm doing all right.
Yeah, well, no, I thought you were going to say reading of the Bible, but that's a whole other that's a whole other conversation.
Right.
This I always love when new friends come on the Dr. Vibe show, and I don't get a chance to ask this live, but how did you find out about this, me, it, whatever? How did you find out about Dr. Vibe?
Social media.
Okay.
That is how I found the Dr. Vibe show. I guess we found each other. I created a video about mental illness and the stigma around mental illness, and posted. It was extremely personal, but I just really wanted to share it. It was really a form of free therapy. Shared it on Twitter, and I think it just eventually kind of got to you, and we were able to connect. And I am so excited that we did.
I am excited as much as you are. I am looking forward to at least one epic conversation. Before we went live, I said to Pamela, the mic is open whenever she wants to come back. So we're speaking it that she's coming back.
Yeah.
Like we do the first time we have new friends on the Dr. Vibe show, home of epic conversations. We read the bio. It's fantastic. We knew you grew up in Texas. So take us back to Little Pamela
Yes.
in Texas. So give us some of the background from the Texas days.
Yeah, so Little Texas, Little Pam. So I grew up in West Texas. I'm gonna say it's a relatively small town called Abilene. We're about 2 hours west of Dallas. I grew up like a lot of young Black girls. I was raised by my grandparents. We lived in a housing community. Very close knit, my cousins that I grew up with, we were more like brothers and sisters. Then young Pam kind of grew into teenage Pam, and I am happy that my teenage daughter is nothing like I was as a teenage girl. And it was probably during that time, like a lot, I think if I look back, things that I experienced with relationships between me and my mom, who battled with substance abuse for probably the greater half of my childhood. A father that I know but don't really know. And kind of dealing with those things, back family where, love is expressed in a very non-direct kind of way. I feed you, I clothe you, so therefore I love you. And so, needless to say, by the time I graduated high school, I was extremely happy to get on the first thing smoking out of town, which for me, that was the military. So I literally joined the military fresh out of high school, graduated in May, and I was in basic training in July. Wow. I had an opportunity while I was in basic training to sign up for the Army's nurse course, and I was able to go to nursing school for free. Was able to see a few little places around the country, nothing fancy. And after 8 years on active duty, I told Uncle Sam, thank you for this beautiful nursing license and the experience, but it was time for me to go. And since leaving active duty, I've really been fortunate to have a really good mix of different jobs. I worked in the prison system. I worked in clinics and hospitals. And, I'm working in a nonprofit now. And so, when I hear that bio and it's like, oh, the 20 years has been somewhat of a blur. In terms of some of the things I've been able to do, but I've been blessed to marry the education, the nursing trainings and things like that with things that are at the heart of me, at the core of me. And it has served me well, both from a personal standpoint as well as a professional standpoint.
Wonderful. We could just spend an hour after what you just shared with us. You know that. But I'm going to cherry pick some things. One of the things that did stand out to me, being raised by your grandparents, you have to share some of that experience. And was there any, looking where you're at now, was there any regret being raised by your grandparents and not your parents?
So I can honestly say there were no regrets, and both of them have passed on. But no, my grandparents took me from my mom when I was 2. And I lived with them until I was about 15, and then I went and lived with the aunt who was kind of nearby. And so during the time, and again, kind of as I'm growing up, getting into those teenage years, you have regrets in that moment. My grandparents were extremely strict. My grandmother was that kind, was like, you're not going over to that girl's house because I don't know her mama, or I know her mama and no. So it was extremely restrictive on things that, I thought like I should be able to do. But then also there was a lot of responsibility. I'm the oldest of the grandchildren that they had. And so, it was a struggle for me balancing kind of all the responsibility, some of which, was on the adult side. Looking after loved ones, responsibility for, going to school, coming home, doing homework, and cleaning the house, helping cook, all those types of things. And then it's like, well, I want to go to the football game. And it's like, well, no, you really can't go to the football game. So as I was growing up, I definitely had some resentment, and also I struggled with, the relationship with my mom. It was rocky growing up, and it probably wasn't until I was about 17 that she and I probably had our first real heart-to-heart conversation about what it was like, not having her in my life on a consistent basis. And so as I got older, though, I was able to look back and say, you know what? I was glad that I wasn't able to hang out with some of those people that my grandmother was like, I don't think you want to be around that, little girl, or I don't think you want to be going, to this place or that place, because I could see the folks who were doing those things and seeing kind of the path that they got put on as opposed to the path that I got put on. So definitely, hindsight is always 20/20, and I would tell anybody now, I wouldn't trade all the spankings I got, the grounding till further notices that I received for anything, because it really helped make me, who I am, and probably saved me from a lot of bad choices.
Excellent. Just going to give a shout out here. You said Monica Wood PR retweeted this conversation, so thank you, Monica. I got to give a shout out because
yes, hey Monica.
Yes, good stuff. Your parents passed away, and my condolences on that.
Mm-hmm.
What is the relationship like today with your mother?
So I actually lost my mom in January of this year, but I can happily say we were able to mend it. And it definitely took some time. Me and my mom, we were so much alike, and that caused some of the conflicts, because we were just so much alike, especially I think emotionally, how we approach things, how we handled and responded to certain things. And so definitely by the time I became a mother, when I was 22, we, had mended that bond. My mom, I would send for her to come and visit. I made sure that my daughter, had a great relationship with her and spent the summers with her, so she, I think through her becoming a grandmother, it got her to see and experience the things that she missed out on my childhood and my sister's as well. And so while her passing was definitely unexpected, and it was bittersweet, I'm happy that, she didn't leave this earth not knowing what she meant to me. I knew what I meant to her and how proud she was of me and the things that I, had done and had accomplished. And so, we were able to lay her, to rest without any, of the angst, of just kind of the challenges that we had to deal with.
How much at all do you share your relationship with your mother with your daughter?
All of it.
Wow, that's great.
All of it. And that's one of the things I think I have tried to be slightly, probably what some people would say, a little too open with my daughter. But for me, I think sometimes as a parent, we can want to not share or show our children the not so good, and kind of sugarcoat things for them. But, she knew, right away that, hey, this was my childhood. This is how it's so different from how I'm choosing to raise you. This is your grandmother, and your grandmother has struggled with these things, but she loves you. She loves me. Because there were times that even when my daughter was young, my mom was still kind of, fighting her battles with addiction. And, I was like, I can't send Kiana to you, this summer. And I had to tell Kiana, your granny is just not well, and she can't go. And of course, the older she got, she was able to understand more. The more I knew and felt comfortable of her understanding, the more I shared with her. And it actually helped her be closer with my mom. My mom, was able to have conversations with my 13-year-old at the time that, I wish she was able to have with me. And so, so I am, when it comes to my oldest, I kind of give her both sides of things. We talk about what's going on with school. We talk about me, when things happen, and kind of relating. And she's as a result of it, she's a very mature, almost 16-year-old.
Oh, she does she think she's the first lady of the house yet?
Not yet. She had that moment when she was about 13.
And you took care of that.
Oh yeah, yeah. It was like a loose switch, and I think she saw like, oh wow, mom, when she said she really meant
There
that.
you
I might
go.
want to change my tone.
There you go. Share with us, what did your experience in the Navy teach you?
So it's actually the Army.
Army, sorry.
No, it's okay. One thing I could say that the Army did for me, and probably like with all people, it definitely gave discipline and I think some structure. But the biggest benefit that I gained from it really was that ability to have someone who, you grow up in, low income housing area, and all the things that come with that. The Army gave me a way to see different places and how other people lived outside of what I grew up with. So it was like, I only, until I joined the Army, I only had the one outlook on how my aunties grew up and how my grandparents grew up and how my mom grew up. And like that, and then everybody around me, we all had those same situations. We all had the same stories because we were all coming from the same projects, the same neighborhood, the same schools. And so when I got into the military and you got to see other people from different states and even different countries, you're like, wow, it's a big world out here. And, not being afraid to, just jump into it. And that was the biggest, and probably one of the most beneficial things outside of, obtaining a nursing license and being able to, have money for education. And even now as a veteran, there are opportunities that my kids will have for school and different things because of, me being a veteran.
Excellent. When did you know, and if you remember the moment that it was time to leave the Army?
Can you repeat that? The audio
Oh,
cut
sorry.
out for a
Sorry
second.
about that. I'm just
Okay.
saying, when did you know it was time to leave the Army? Do you remember the moment?
I do. I remember it like it was yesterday. I was stationed at Fort Sam Houston, which is in San Antonio, Texas. Um, we were the unit or the company that I was assigned to. I was up on or coming down on orders to deploy. I was going to deploy to Germany for about 6 months, and then I would go from Germany to Iraq. And at the time, my daughter was 2. And I talked to a fellow soldier. She and I worked together. She had no kids, and she was like, "Hey, we did the same job." She was like, "Hey, I'm willing to go." So we scheduled an appointment to talk with my commander. That we just basically wanted. She was going to take my place. I was going to stay, which has been done, and that's something that wasn't uncommon. And that commander proceeded to tell me that my child was not issued to me when I joined the military, and that he would not honor that request. And so I immediately thanked him. I did an about face. And when I walked out of that office, I was like, well, I guess now I'm going to be dropping paperwork to leave the military. And because they put you through so much, I had enough physical, bones and joints and things going on. I was like, not only am I going to leave, but y'all are going to pay me severance when I go. And they did.
Wow. Wow. And how has life been post Navy?
It's actually been great. I knew once I had made that decision, and then actually, you go through that process of getting out and all that comes with that. I made a promise to myself that I would never work somewhere or with someone or for someone if I didn't want to. After spending 8 years on active duty, where you basically just got to do what you're told, go where you're told, when you're, it's like, they say jump and you just say how high. I just promised myself that I would not have sacrificed all, those 8 years and then to turn around and do that again for a paycheck. And so it's been, really great for me. I mean, I definitely have had, you've had a few supervisors here or there and a few people that, you're kind of like, but really all in all, I look back, I don't regret the decision to get out. And life has been, well.
Excellent. Well, we found out a little bit about you, which is very important. Let's get down to some more fun stuff.
Yes.
Uh, you wanted to talk about the increasing impacts of stress and anxiety on Black women. Why did you want to speak about this evening?
I think for me, we, well, let me speak for myself personally. So during the time of me getting out of the military, one of the things that you have to do is to actually sit down and see the psychologist. So, here I am, 24, I think, at the time. I go in to see this psychologist, and I'm thinking, I'm going to check this block. I'm here because they said I have to be here. And he's going through the, regular kind of psychological questions. And so he asked me, well, tell me about your childhood. And I was, very frank, very blunt. I was like, in totality, it was not well. It was quite sucky. He kind of kept digging, and he was like, well, why haven't you ever sought, therapy or counseling? And I just told him flat out, I was like, because I don't have time to go lay on someone's couch and complain about how bad my childhood was. And he proceeded to let me know, he was like, while he understood it, he highly encouraged that once I left the Army, that I went to see someone, and he, gave me a long list of clinics and places that I would be able to go to. Fast forward probably 2 years later, I am completely overwhelmed and stressed with just life. I've got a fiance who's getting ready to deploy. I'm, working 12-hour shifts. I've got my door, it's life that's happening around me. But my coping mechanisms at that time were failing badly. And one morning I got up, same as I always do. My daughter is extremely slow in the morning. She's still slow in the mornings.
Okay.
And I'm telling her, hey, come on, we gotta go. Please hurry up. We get halfway down the stairs, and she was like, oh, Mom, I forgot my backpack. And literally in that moment, I swear the room went red. And I literally could see myself wanting to just hurl this child that I brought into this world against the wall. I mean, I was that kind of just, in that moment, just full of rage. And even then, I never said a word to anybody. I kind of somehow managed to calm myself enough to get her backpack. We got off to school. And again, I fast forward a year ahead. I still have not sought therapy. There was another instance to where she had a bad day at school. The teachers had called me. I get home, and then she lies to me about what she did and what happened, and I snap. She's crying, I'm crying, bad situation. And I ended up talking to a friend at work, like later that week. And she was like, I have a wonderful therapist. She's great. She's easy to talk to. I'm going to give you her information. I really think you could call her and talk with her. So probably then I only waited about 2 weeks. I called, I made the appointment. I had my first session. Me and this therapist both end up crying by the end of the session. And it really was in that moment that she kind of pointed out to me what I think a lot of Black women struggle with is just one, wanting to admit that we are stressed in the first place. Like, we don't want anybody to think that we don't have it. It's like, Black woman's motto is, we're strong, and anything outside of me asking for help, getting help, makes you weak somehow. And that just really isn't the case. And so probably from that moment on, I still see that same therapist to this day. I love her to death. I can see her usually anytime I want. If I need to get in right away, she's there for me. But it was probably from that point on that I wanted to make it an effort to kind of do like the colleague that I work with and talk about what I was dealing with.
Mm.
And in that talking with people, I found that the more I opened up about everything that I was dealing with, I ultimately got diagnosed of having a major depressive disorder. Um, and the more I talked to people about it, the more I saw, and people got, we are not in this by ourselves. We are all going through some very similar or closely related things, that sometimes just talking to each other can alleviate some of that stress. And then, when I think about, just the times that we're living in now, we're even under more stress. So there's the individual stress that we kind of have and sometimes can even create for ourselves by just the decisions that we make. But then there's also just these social and environmental stresses that some of them we can correct and fix, and other ones are just well outside of our control. And we have to find a better way to confront those things, to live with those things, and address them. When you think about women and heart disease, stress related. If you think about, high blood pressure, stress related. Poor childbirth outcomes, stress related. And believe it or not, during pregnancy, and there are things that even just genetically, psychologically, you can predispose your unborn children to, by just carrying around so much of that stress and anxiety. And so I really, I tell anybody the best free therapy I ever have is just sitting around with women talking.
Okay.
Talking and trying to come up with real life solutions that's going to work for you and everything you have going on in your life.
Excellent. I was going to ask you what are some of the areas where many Black women experience stress, but what I'm going to do is I have a great article here that was written back on April 25th from the New York Times, and the title of the opinion piece is called "The Strong and Stressed Black Woman." And it's written by Inger E. Burnett Ziegler. Dr. Burnett Ziegler is a clinical psychologist. I'm going to share some of this article and have you add on to it. But as I said, I was going to say what are some of the things that are stressing many Black women. But I think first things first, I'm going to quote this paragraph from the article, and it goes, "Many, myself included," that's the doctor, "wear the badge of strong Black woman with honor. We are proud of our tenaciousness, and we never let the world see us crack. But we are suffering silently with the mental and physical health consequences of carrying the burden of family, work, and community responsibilities, compounded by personal experiences of trauma and loss, all in an environment of pervasive racial and gender discrimination."
Yes. Wow. And that's a mouthful.
Yeah. And I think we get that paragraph itself. We could spend the conversation there. And so with some of the things that are expressed there, I'd like you to get your thought process on some of the areas. The burden of family and the Black woman. And unfortunately, many families are headed up by single Black women.
Absolutely.
And that is a potential stress and anxiety piece right there. So what would you like to share in regards to that area?
So, I think one of the biggest challenges, because before I met my husband, yes, I was a single mom, raising my daughter as best I could, away from, the major support systems of family. And so if it's one thing if I could go back, and I would probably encourage my younger self then to try and do, is that, believe it or not, there are actual resources out there. And to give yourself the permission to go after those resources that are available. I think too often we just don't give ourselves that permission because of that badge of honor, as the piece mentioned. It's almost as if we are afraid that, and a lot of it is fear. It's fear of, I can't, we wear a mask. I don't want anyone to know that I am struggling with whatever it is that you're struggling with. If it's financial struggles, we hide it. We don't want anybody to know. If it's relationship issues that we're having, and just as a single mom, I think it's important that you have to understand, you have to put yourself first. As selfish as that sounds, if you fall apart, if you are not well, children are not well, and I mean, and it goes on. If you have a spouse, that relationship is going to suffer. Work relationships are going to suffer if you here and heart, spiritually, however, whichever you want to look at it, if that is not well, everything, it just has a domino effect, and everything begins to suffer.
I agree. One of the things I share with people is if your life's a mess, it means your mind's a mess.
Yes. Yes. Some of us have messy minds.
Yes.
That we need to clean up.
Absolutely. No doubt about that. Now, it's an interesting point that in this article, the author says, and you mentioned one end of it about mental health care is often considered taboo.
Yeah.
But on the other end, in this column, the doctor mentioned sometimes mental health care is unaffordable. So what does a Black woman who needs some attention mental health care wise, if they can't afford it, what suggestions would you bring to the table?
So free services, and again, it's kind of how you go about approaching it. But there are some churches, there are some community-based organizations that offer the services either free. They offer it on sliding scales, which means you maybe only have to pay $10 to see it. And there are actually, depending on where you live, universities who have departments of social work or departments of psychology, their interns have to clock hours. Those are non-billable, and they're free, and there's usually very limited eligibility that you have to have in order to be able to access those programs. So like here in Virginia, VCU and their School of Social Work, they have slots that you can sign up for if you are uninsured, underinsured, to be able to speak to a licensed healthcare professional. We are also fortunate to have 2 federally qualified health centers, which again, those types of entities offer services that are oftentimes free or at reduced cost. So for some of us, it's kind of taking a little bit of time and finding out what resources are available. Some of it is, one of the things that Priceless Vessels does is trying to kind of compile and have all those resources on hand. And so if someone reaches out, I know I had a young lady who was from Arlington who reached out, and same thing. She was ready to get help and speak to someone, but wasn't insured at the time. I was literally able to find 2 places, right there for her, get the contact information, and for her to be able to start doing some appointments. So sometimes it's a matter of asking because mental health services, unlike other services for diabetes care, even HIV care, you know where those are. They're advertising those. They're right on the health system's website. But the mental health services is either nowhere on the page or tucked down somewhere at the bottom, or there's an extensive waiting list, even if you can't afford it. And so, for those, you have to be creative and think outside of the box. Another thing to do is that until you can get access to the more kind of licensed professional care, is finding someone who you can feel safe enough with to begin just to have very open conversations because it's a release valve. You just can't keep it all bottled up in. You have to find somewhere to let that out. And either it's with talking with someone, journaling is another good resource until you're able to kind of get linked into care. I have journals that I still have today at 38 that I started writing when I was 13.
Wow. That is impressive. Another area, and I think one of the biggest growth areas in the African American and African Canadian community over the last number of years, is increased number of Black women in the workplace. Mm-hmm. But that has also come with some challenges.
Yes. Yeah, so we're working and finding jobs, but our jobs are also causing us stress. And even employers can oftentimes do a really bad job. I remember telling my a boss one time that I was taking a mental health day. She was like, well, is that sick leave? Is it vacation? I was like, you can code it whatever you want to code it. I'm not coming in tomorrow. I was like, and I'm not sick. I just need a mental break. And so, when we are, working, I think on top of everything else, I'm all about that work-life balance. We all have to work. We all have to, do what we need to do to put food on the table, roof over our heads and those things. But we also have to strike that balance. So oftentimes the stress and anxiety comes because we've gotten too off balance with work. We've gotten too off balance with putting other relationships ahead of taking that kind of me time to get, recentered, refocused, and just have your own kind of woosah moments. Every Mother's Day, all I ever want is a day by myself.
Nice.
I don't want to go anywhere. I don't want any flowers, gifts. I want that just a whole day of me.
Well, it's interesting. When I was on vacation, I was staying at a resort and meet people from all around the world. And we met this couple from Ireland. And
Wow.
it was fascinating that they were telling me that in Ireland, when you start a job, you automatically get 25 days of vacation.
Wow.
I went, what? And it's funny because this lady was telling me that she has more vacation days than the CEO of her company. And
Wow.
because the company is based in the U.S., but
Uh-huh.
she works for them in Ireland. And of course, vacation allotment, U.S., two different
Yeah.
countries. And I said, wow, she has more vacation days, official vacation days than her CEO.
Yeah. I think the average like PTO holiday vacation time now for most organizations is about 21 days. And that's probably on the higher side. A lot of
Yes.
smaller places, it's, you're lucky if you get 2 weeks.
Well, not only that, so many people working on contract these days.
Yeah. Contract, if you're self-employed, and especially if you're a self-employed person and you're trying to run your own business, there is no vacation. It's always work, work, work. And then too, in some of the workplace dynamics, one of the big things that everybody is on now is the diversity and inclusion, but nobody is really getting that right. And again, that's causing more stress if as a Black woman I have to come to work and either justify my Blackness. It's just like that's not really what you come to work for. And then you have to, sit through these meetings and it's not really getting at the point. So even how, workplaces are structured and again, that those are those social stressors that we have, with work. It's the coworkers that, aren't carrying their load if you're, working on a team for something. And then management right now is just not doing a good enough job, I think, of helping minimize those stigmas. So, again, people don't want to, take mental health days, or people don't want to, have some, even when they have services available, no one wants to go to the supervisor and request those services, because some employers have what they call their employee assistance programs that will give you maybe 4 free sessions to
Yep.
go and talk to someone.
Yep.
But no one utilizes them.
Well,
I think
it's interesting too. I'm just sorry to interrupt. A lot of times companies offer that, and people just totally ignore it. And it's to me, you've wasted money. You've wasted something that's given to you, and you don't think it that. And I know that in a number of organizations, they allow you to extend it to family members too.
Yes. Here, when I worked for the state department here in Virginia, that was, and I used it, and I had them. I was like, well, those are 4 free ones that I don't have to pay for. And it does. It extended to my husband. It extended to my daughter if she needed it. But it took me such a long time. It took me till I was 30. So we're going to talk about maybe the last 8 years when I'm like, I got it. I get it. It took me so long to be comfortable, first just in my own skin, and then comfortable with really just saying, hey, I'm progress. I'm a progress. I'm a project right now. And getting to that point. And so I think having conversations like this and working with, other people, it hopefully will help move that needle so that people can kind of get to that point where saying, hey, it's here, the service is available, and I'm going to go get it. If you don't like it, if you go home and tell your spouse I got a bunch of crazy people working with me or for me, so be it.
Well, and this is an FYI. Most specifically, we're talking about Black women tonight. So Black women, if you're working for a company and before you sign that contract, read the fine line and see what does this company offer in regards to employee assistance programs. Because in a lot of cases, that would be a make or break for me.
Yeah, I think that's the same as with when we're looking for a job or we're interviewing or we get offered how much we're getting paid. Is there medical? Is there dental? Even within the medical plans, do you ask that is mental health services included in the medical coverage that you're offering? Because sometimes some plans have it, some plans don't, and some plans have it and it's still not free or cheap.
And not only that, to me, that's part of your paycheck.
Yes.
It's not there in dollar and cents, but if you use it, it's paid for. So that's part of the contract.
Yes.
And if you're
less money out your pocket.
Yeah. And if you're self-employed, make sure you build in time to take a break. As one of my mentors says, that staying still is part of the journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And being okay, I think, with being by yourself.
Yeah.
Some of us struggle so much with not just sitting still, but we don't want to be alone. As I need someone around, or I need to go and do this. And, it's in those still moments, it's in those quiet moments, you really find out a lot about, yourself.
Well, not only that, and a lot of people need, and actually I was facilitated a talk on the weekend for singles. And one of the points I made to them was that even though you're single, that does not mean you're whole.
Yes.
But that's a whole other conversation. So I want to veer too much. Do want to shout out to one of the great friends of the Dr. Vibe show, Divine Wright, who was on with Tara Lassard about 2-3 weeks ago talking about ovarian cancer. And this is actually Ovarian Cancer Month. And both of them were on. The replay will be up before the end of this week. We're broadcasting live on September 11th. But by the end of this week, the replay will be up, and Divine Wright will be coming back, talking about some of the challenges she had in regards to taking care of her mother before her mother passed away with ovarian cancer.
Wow, yeah.
So I'm going to share some of her comments because she's on fire tonight, as always. She goes, yes, without balance, we can lose ourselves and take a physical hit. Too many, I think she's probably saying too many Black women get sick from lack of balance. Next comment she makes is there are parts of the world that only need to work 26.5 hours a week. And so they are the healthiest as well. Somewhere you can go home and eat your lunch with your family. Our country ranks very low. That's the United States. Next up, she says, also see what they offer in regards to workplace initiatives too. How are employees being taken care of while they're on site, whether it's healthy food, movement classes or breaks, mindfulness.
Absolutely. And mindfulness is one of those, cognitive-based therapies that I think is underutilized, really across the board. But, I think where we can find more opportunities to take things like mindfulness and put it in the communities, put it where people actually are, where people work, play, and live, as opposed to having to make an appointment, having to drive to another place, take off time from work and things like that. I think we, the public health community, the medical professionals, the mental health professionals, I think they've got to do a better job of taking, really, they've got the research that shows that these techniques work. But it's like, you've got this great, tool, and nobody's being able to access it. Nobody's being able to actually benefit from it, or at best, definitely not the people who actually really need it.
Absolutely. The another area, and it's interesting, a lot of Black women are on the front lines when it comes to community work and social justice. And I know you've had experience in the area of community work. How can that affect Black women and stress and anxiety?
So I think as women by design, we are nurturers. That's just how God made us, and that's a beautiful thing. Um, with that, though, especially those of us who do work in the community, we have to be careful not to take everything on for those that we are actually trying to help and support. And that can be a big challenge. When I'm talking with, a group of young girls, that I look at all of them and I see my daughter, I can't bring them all home with me, though. And I also can't bring their issues home, and or their parents' luggage and things home. And I think we have to be careful when we are in that community context, and that's why it's important that we have to make sure that we are investing back into ourselves mentally, so that we are better equipped to do it. I like to call it as kind of getting that emotional refill. If you're working and doing community based type work, you are pouring physical, mental, and emotional energy into other people, and hopefully helping them to live better quality lives. You have to make sure that you have some type of support or mechanism that is emotionally refilling you. Because if not, what happens is you end up kind of giving, and before you know it, you are now on, I call it, your emotional tank is on E. And then now you begin to, suffer, your stress levels begin to increase, your anxiety begins to go up. And then again, the physiological, and that's one thing that people think, especially Black women, we underestimate the physiological impact of stress. Just what naturally happens in our bodies when we are confronted with stress. Our heart rate automatically begins to get elevated. Your blood pressure is going to increase. Your fight or flight response is automatically kicked in. And too often we are in a constant state of flight or fight. And as a Black woman, we're probably not going to flee. We want to fight. And so you can only maintain that for so long before you start to actually experience physical, symptoms. So you go to the doctor and, now you're on blood pressure medication, or you're wondering how you ended up, having a heart attack with no symptoms when you actually probably did have symptoms. When you're not sleeping, when you're overeating or not eating at all, if you're, drinking and it literally snowballs out of control when we don't address that stress in a healthy way. So stress can be good. It's just we Black women are in a constant chronic state of stress.
I love the quote you said, many Black women are in the state of flight or fight.
Yes.
That's a tweetable. That's going out via Twitter on my Twitter timeline. I think that'll get one or two people's attention. You think?
Yeah, I mean, and we're like this. We're ready to go.
No doubts. Continuing on in regards to this, and you've experienced some of this, and thank you for your transparency, because you did share with us you had one loss earlier on this year, but you had another loss right after that. And that can add, at best at times, it can be a deterrent, but it can even be deeper if you're a woman of color.
Yeah. So, like I said, just that starting the year off with 2 deaths back to back, one of which being my mom, it really snatched the rug from underneath me. I was already, I had spent probably the previous 3 months before, my mom's passing, on the road a lot, doing trainings and different things like that. So I was already at a pretty high, probably stress level, before that happened. And then when those 2 deaths, came along, I said it was, my foundation was rocked. And I really had to put life on pause. I notified, people were working with at the time, I can either resign and quit altogether, or I'm going to need you to give me the time that I need. And I don't know how much time that's going to be. But I really had to just stop. As you said, I had to be still because it was too much in my mind. The question, it was the grief process. I had to begin it, and I had to work my way through it. I had to just understand that I'm going to be in this grief process for quite some time, and say, recognizing when I needed to pull back, recognizing when I needed to cry, recognizing when I needed to yell, kick, scream, whatever it was. And I remember me and my husband sat down, because he noticed. He was like, "I'm worried about you." And I'm thinking, I'm maintaining, is what I was thinking. And he just pointed out, he's like, I'm worried about you. So he and I sat down, we talked, and, he was like, again, he gave me, as my husband, the permission that I should have gave myself.
Wow. And you know what? And you have a beautiful relationship, if you can say that, because I don't think, let alone Black relationships, I don't think in many relationships that happens.
No, definitely not enough, or as often as it should. But right. He gave me what I needed to hear in terms of saying, "Pam, it's okay."
You know what this means now?
What?
We have to get him on the show. Go on now.
I will do my best.
Yeah, he's probably one of those shy guys, right?
Oh, very much so. He's a military man as well. I will definitely do my best. We may get him to say a quick "hey."
Yeah, okay. I know if we get that, that's $1 million right there. I know.
Absolutely. And he, I think the both of us would tell anybody, we, as opposite and as different as we are, where I am deficient in things, that's his strong suit. And where he is deficient, I'm stronger in those things. But in me losing my mom and me not wanting to, I was suicidal at one point.
Wow.
At several points in my life. I attempted suicide when I was 13 and again when I was 19. And so even though he probably will never fully grasp like what state you have to be in to want to kill yourself, he didn't shame me for it. And in his way, as best he could, he was like, whatever that place you were in, I don't want the loss of your mom to put you back in that place.
Fantastic.
And that is just so important. And I was like, I never want to be back in that space. But I know that if there are things that if I don't do them, it's inevitable. I have a diagnosis. I have a disorder that I will have for the rest of my life. And I can be okay with that. But I also know that with that, just as if I had any other type of illness or disease, I got to do, what I'm supposed to be, doing. And it's well beyond the regular eating right and being physically active. I've got to put some mental work in to keep me.
Exactly. Some more comments here from Divine Wright saying, and the challenges while working and not getting the right support from my employer while caring for my mother. Not a lot there. She says it was a shame, and even while I was sick, was a battle with my ex-employer. She says, I am sorry for your loss. I'm glad you took the time needed. It's a lot while you're working. I took 3 weeks off, and like you told them, I didn't know when I would return. Some don't know how to say, and then say and stop and just keep pushing through. We have to take better care of ourselves. Our parents would want that for us. Grief support is so imperative.
Absolutely. And even to her point, as a caregiver, so one of the, I was telling one of my other, children, my work children, as I like to call them, is, I've been talking and doing work around how do we better support caregivers. Caregivers are oftentimes less healthier than the people they are actually caring for.
Oh, yes. And I know Divine Wright, when she's on, I think it's in about a week and a half, 2 weeks is going to be talking about that experience. And one of the things I especially share with younger people, and they don't get it, I
Right.
say that don't be surprised, but one day you may have to take care of your parents.
Yes. That sandwich generation. You're caring for mom or dad or somebody, and you got your kids. That is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger from a wide variety of stuff, whether it's cancer, Alzheimer's disease. It's so much. And just like you said, the support is not there from employers. It's not there oftentimes for family, which is where you think it should be. It's not there from friends. You just kind of feel isolated.
Yeah.
At times I'm like, who do I call, for something? And so, we've definitely got to do a better job of sounding that bullhorn, for and advocating for employers to offer those types of services and assistance. And I'm big. I do some work with the nonprofit that works directly with churches and in trying to engage them. And one of the big things I try and stress to some of these pastors and bishops and faith leaders is that the people sitting in your pews are dying from a number of different things. And they have to do a better job of supporting their responsibility, not just for the souls of the people in that church, but the physical bodies that those souls currently live in.
True.
Because it's churches on every corner in a lot of cities, and we really do need them to step. And a lot of people, not even just from the aspect of churches kind of having that easy access, a lot of people don't seek care for mental health things because of their faith.
Yeah. Adding on here, Divine Right says, when I cared for my mom, I lost weight. I wasn't eating. I wasn't sleeping. But thank God for a caregiver support group and even my own mom who asked if I was caring for myself, and I wasn't.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, and that's powerful. I mean, but that is the reality. You're ripping and running. You're trying to get them to doctor's appointments. And if you have kids, you're wrangling them. You got soccer practice or choir or whatever it may be. You got a husband at home or a significant other at home.
You're going all around the place.
Yeah, you're on overload. And then what happens when you actually maybe do try and go to sleep? I know I have it. You can't shut your brain off. You go down, you go to bed at night, but this just, I call it kind of my internal mental marquee, and it just keeps scrolling, sometimes all night from this thing to that thing, this next, what I got to do tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Oh, I need to do this. Mm-hmm. And in the process, just like you're saying, you're not eating, you're not taking care of yourself. And before you know it, you end up in the hospital in a bed next to the person you're taking care of.
That's scary.
Yes.
That's very, very scary. What I'm going to do is have you share about one more area, and it's another big area that causes stress and anxiety amongst many Black women: racial and gender discrimination.
Yes. And I know we all, when we hear that, the thing that should come to mind for most of us is Serena Williams and the U.S. Open. And that was both of those discriminations on display on a world stage. And sadly, it happens every day. Somewhere, and sometimes it's very subtle, sometimes it's right in your face. I have had times where I have showed up to present and they are looking for the male who's supposed to be presenting with me. I have gone to places and they were expecting a white woman instead of a Black woman. They just saw Pamela Price and probably assumed that's a white lady. And you get the side eyes or you get the usual, you speak very well, or, it's those, again, kind of subtle, things, but we are experiencing them, every day. We're experiencing them at work. Unfortunately, we're experiencing them, even at church. I know a lot of us, watched, the live stream of the Aretha Franklin service, and the outrage, between the young girl Ariana Grande and the bishop. And, I was on social media, that evening looking at those things. And, you saw woman after woman after woman chiming in saying that happens to me all the time. That has happened to me. And I'm like, this is in churches that this is going on, that there is some arbitrary line that allows, because I'm woman, that allows that to be crossed, or for that line not to exist at all. And, part of this begins, or is really related to, we have never, I think, as a race, and definitely not as females, we have never dealt with the trauma from slavery. Most of, those of us living today, we've never been slaves. But that mentality from, house slave, field slave, light skin, dark skin. I mean, all of those things, whether subconsciously or consciously, cause us to act or behave in a certain kind of way, and also causes us to act or respond to certain things in a certain kind of way. We don't support each other too often as Black women, as we should. So some people are like, I would love to share with you or tell people, but if I'm going to tell, Pam, and she going to go and tell Jennifer as soon as I hang up the phone with her, I don't want to tell her anything. And so we have to do, I think, a better job at, one, policing ourselves, because I think we also have to kind of take ownership for roles that we may play, or not being putting ourselves in certain situations. And then I also think that we have to be better advocates for one another. When we see something happens, like with what happened with Serena, we all have to be saying something about it. It can't be just that, well, that was just her, or that doesn't apply to me, or I'm not going to say anything. We all have to stand up and say, whether you have experienced it or not experienced it, to call it what it is, and to say that you're not going to tolerate it. And if we don't start doing it with ourselves, we really can't expect men and the outside world to treat us a certain kind of way if amongst each others we don't even give each other that same kind of courtesy.
Very, very true. This has been an epic conversation. We could go on further, but we're just going to do part one, because I know that Pam's going to come back and just drop some more knowledge bombs on us. We've been talking about stress and anxiety and the Black woman, and we have been referring to an article called, the title of the article is "The Strong and Stressed Black Woman," written by Dr. Inger E. Burnett Ziegler. It's from the New York Times website. I will be posting this article on my own website, and also we're going to, if she has some time, we're going to have her come on the show, and if Pamela has time, we'll get both of them on the show together. Great. If that happens. I'm going to read a little bit more excerpt from this article, as I believe it's very important. I'm just going to go on here. So I'm going to read a bit, and then we're going to have Pamela close it out. So here's some more from the article. Black women are more likely than white women to have experienced post-traumatic stress disorder resulting from childhood maltreatment and sexual and physical violence. They are more likely to have stress related to family, employment, finances, discrimination, or racism, and safety concerns associated with living in high-crime neighborhoods. Black women are more likely to be depressed, and when they are, their symptoms are more severe, last longer, and are more likely to interfere with their ability to function at work, school, and home. Black women are more likely to have feelings of sadness, hopelessness, and worthlessness. And yet, 50% of Black adults with mental health needs in America receive treatment. Shame is a key barrier, which Pamela spoke about earlier. Black women also prefer Black mental health care provider, and there are too few Black social workers, psychologists, and psychiatrists. In low-income communities, mental health services are scarce and waiting lists are long. And finally, more than 16% of the Black women in America are uninsured, and many can't afford treatment. Meanwhile, the psychological wear and tear of being a strong Black woman takes a toll on the mind and body. Uh, Mentioned here, doctor says, traditionally, Black women have garnered strength from God. The church provides a place for fellowship, social support, and spiritual guidance. However, the Black church has not always condoned secular mental health care, and churchgoers may feel that their faith is called into question if they seek extra help. In lieu of therapy, some people cope with their distress through eating unhealthy foods and overeating, smoking, drinking alcohol, and spending excessive time in bed or watching television. While these behaviors may provide temporary relief, stress and depression can emerge in the form of irritability, anger, physical pain, and chronic illness. I could read more, but I just thought that this would be a little good. And her last comment here, her last paragraph says, oh, well, actually, she provides two organization groups that you can reach out to, Black women in America. One is Black Girl in OM and Girl Trek, are raising awareness about the importance of self-care and providing outlets for living a healthy lifestyle. And then the last paragraph, she says, we must let go of the singular narrative of what it means to be a strong Black woman. Black women have harnessed their strength out of the necessity to support themselves and their families when no one else would, and that should be applauded. But there is also strength in vulnerability, comfort in seeking that you're not alone, and power in knowing when to ask for help. Dr. Burnett Ziegler, you are on Twitter. I got you on Twitter. I'm going to be reaching out to you to come on because this is an outstanding article. And it's not just for Black women, it's also for Black men, and even more for Black men on this.
Yeah. And our kids.
Yes.
I think we can overlook our children.
Absolutely.
And that is to their detriment.
Absolutely.
Adolescents are at, risk for the same mental illness. And again, it's those those childhood scars, traumas, and all those things. But I can remember at 13 having stayed in the hospital for 4 days after trying to take my life. And do you know, nobody asked me when I got home why? Nobody asked why. Life just went on.
Yeah, and sometimes the best way you can get out of the anxiety is just ask other people how they're doing.
Yes.
Simple.
Yes.
Simple.
Yeah. That article really is a great article, and she definitely hit on something with the churches and again, kind of the role they play in some of that stigma. I had a thread on Facebook where, it was just open, where people could feel free to share and talk about their issues, successes, challenges, or just give words of encouragement. And I had a gentleman who posted an essay almost.
Wow.
On that depression was a demonic spirit, and basically, if you got it, you're just not living right, and you need to get right with God, and that is the wrath of God on. I mean, he went in. He went in on this essay, and I had to hide his post. I didn't delete it, but I did hide it because I was like, I don't want anybody who's looking at this and all you see is, I'm praying for you, I support you, thank you for sharing. You had women just sharing. I've been through this. I've had this. I've gone through that. Hey, I was able to do this, and this is what has helped me. I was like, I do not want this group to see his post and become discouraged, because I was like, I know if I'm feeling the way I'm feeling, I can only imagine what someone who is thinking about going to therapy, and then they see this and say, well, never mind.
Yeah, exactly. That'll just turn them right off.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Pamela, thank you for taking time out of your positive, productive schedule to share with us this evening.
I am glad. Thank you for having me.
Now, if people want to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
So there's two best ways. One is by email. So you can definitely shoot me an email at pprice at pricelessenterprises.org. And Twitter is also, I'm probably on there more than any other social platform, and that's at Priceless Vessel on Twitter. You can send me a message on there, follow me on there. I do follow back. But those are the two easiest ways to reach me, because I'm rarely sitting at a desk or accessible by phone.
There you go, because she leads a positive, productive life.
I try.
You go. No, you do. You don't try. You do.
Thank
It's
you.
Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show, the home of Epic Conversations. And I'm the host of Epic Conversations. If you want to watch replays of my epic YouTube conversations, you're right at the right place. If you want to listen to audio replays, you can go to my website, thedrvibeshow.com. You can also go to Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, Google Play Music, and iHeartRadio. You can listen to selected audio replays at thegoodmanproject.com, also WJMS Radio out of New York City, and Amazon Alexa. Certified Empowerment Coach, President and CEO of Express Your Vibe Coaching and Communications. If you'd like a complimentary session, please reach out to me. Twitter at drvibeshow, email address dr.vibe at the drvibeshow.com, or you can go to my website, go to the top, click on contact or connect with Dr. Vibe, and right there with one click you can email me, send me a video message, send me an audio message. I am a brand ambassador for the only online magazine dedicated to African Americans in food, wine, and travel. The name of the magazine is Cuisine Noir Magazine. Website address is cuisinenoirmag.com. If you're a business or entrepreneur and you'd like media promotion, I run a service called Getting Media Coverage. And with that, I help businesses and entrepreneurs get media promotion so they can elevate their business, product, or service. Finally, Dr. Vibe is going to be making another appearance in the very near future. I'll be hosting the Men's and Women's Summit on Masculinity, which is happening in Toronto on November 17th and 18th. You can check me that. If you'd like to book me for anything else, reach out to me. That would be outstanding. Now it is 4 last things I say before I sign off. First of all, live your life as a dream. If you can dream it, you can make it. Next up, sometimes you have to get smaller to get stronger. And finally, block assumptions, but there's now one other finally. Aim bigger, aim better, aim higher, and aim wider. With that, I'd like to say, God bless, peace be well, keep the faith. Thank you so much for Divine Right, for helping. Oh, she just said, she's got a few last things she's saying, said, here she was sick with cancer and saw that I was fading. I didn't even know it. It's hard to shut down, but we have to press pause and do self-care. Yes, my mother said, I don't want to see you here next to me. And then finally saying, Pam, thank you. This was a great conversation. It was epic.
Thank you.
This is fantastic. And as I said, the replay will be up of this soon. Check out the replay of Divine Right, Serena Wills, and also Tara Lassard. They ripped it up about ovarian cancer, and Serena's coming up again soon, and Tara's coming up soon. So the ladies are on fire on the Dr. Vibe show. God bless, peace and well, keep the faith, and from my heritage, walk good. Thanks for watching live on the replay. Be well. Good night.